Hi, I'm Alan Ross. We're here at the RE Plus Conference and Exposition. We're talking to thought leaders about the future of the energy economy. So join us and enjoy. My guest is Kevin Meagher. Kevin, thank you for joining us.
My
He's
pleasure.
the Chief Science Officer for the Sun, you got it right there in your shirt, the Sun Company. We're going to talk a good bit about what that means, but I want to talk about you right now. How did you get started in all of this, and why are you the Chief Science Officer at the Sun Company?
I actually started in mission critical applications analytics, really in the semiconductor days, and there are industries that are very dependent on consistent, reliable power, and that slowly migrated from semiconductor manufacturing to other mission critical, and in particular power. So I've spent about 25 years in the beginning of the microgrid space, working with a lot of battery technologies and battery startups for different organizations.
Right.
And then had an opportunity after I sold my previous company to meet up with and join the Sun Company. And the Sun Company proclaimed a vision that is all about the democratization and rapid advancement of renewable energy everywhere in the world.
Democratization and I love that. That's going to be a new term that we use, but that's excellent. Good.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And that company had, in particular, has focused on what I believe is one of the really key technologies towards renewable energy, which is energy storage. And we are actually developing our own flow battery, which I know you have some previous experience with, but it's a particular technology that's exceptionally well suited towards stationary applications like energy storage. And the combination of the energy storage and the rapid expansion of renewable energy is just an exciting time. It's never been more exciting than right now to be in this industry, for sure.
Is it utility scale storage? Is that what you're talking about?
It is utility scale storage, but we're not focused on utilities. So we're, in fact, one of the things that we're doing is what we refer to as independent renewable energy power plants. And they're areas that are designated with the greatest possible amount of energy storage, but they do not have to be connected to the utility, either because there's not adequate service in the location, like the desert in California, or in other places. So it's really connecting to the utility when it makes sense, and I believe it makes tremendous sense. I'm one of those people who believes that microgrids will enhance the reliability and resilience of the macrogrid instead of the other way around. So it's a very interesting approach. And then to that we add the flow battery development that we're doing with a couple of the Department of Energy national labs.
So when the first hurricane, well, I say the first, but when the hurricane hit 5 years ago in Puerto Rico, I was the president of an organization called the Electric Power Reliability Alliance. I've retired from them, but we were asked by the DOE to look at the proposal to spend $5 billion to rebuild it.
Right.
And our answer was, you got to do storage and you got to do microgrids. Please don't build big generation plants and send power over the mountains. All of the towers fall, right? And it takes forever to go rebuild them. So, I don't think they did it the way that our group said they should do it. But that's brilliant, because that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
If we'd have done Puerto Rico that way, this current hurricane, and there's some things that did happen, would not have had the impact that it's having again. Once again, we're finding that the old system has done well for us, but it's not working anymore.
And it's funny because in every other advanced technology today, we always go to distributed architectures as the right solution, but it's been more difficult to do on the power side, partly because, as I remind people, power is a different animal. First off, you don't get, nobody's going to get killed from having a bad cell phone, but you can definitely kill people with power and start fires. So it's a lot more complicated problem, but it is the right approach. There's no question in my mind that it's the right approach.
So tell me a little bit about, because let's first of all talk about because you mentioned that the idea that we're at a point, the inflection point, where the whole decarbonization and renewable energy is happening rapidly. Battery storage has got to be a big part of that solution, or else it just doesn't work at scale, right? So talk about the industry, what you've seen from the idea of renewables, where we are today, and what are the current challenges that we're going to face?
Yeah, boy, there's a half an hour discussion, but I would say, in particular, I was fortunate enough to have been heavily involved in the DOE Sunshot Initiative.
Yeah.
And I believe that is one of the most successful Department of Energy programs that ever happened by far. And they're now doing something similar with the Grand Energy Challenge, trying to structure it the same way and the similar approach. But the changes in the industry are this bizarre convergence of events, or unfortunate events, both from climate change and the resiliency factor that's bringing into play, as well as the realization that distributed energy makes a lot more sense for resiliency, not just for reliability on the macro grid. And there's other technologies like EVs that are really driving even more reliance on energy, reliable energy, than we've ever seen before. And then you throw in the Ukraine war and just the geopolitical problems that everybody's concerned about, supply chain, available technologies, and it's all kind of mixed up together, where it's not just us power guys that are talking about doing this anymore. Everybody is now. In fact, I did a workshop here yesterday, and one of the questions, I got several questions from people that said, we really want to go forward with this, but where do we start? How do we? These are just people that were here. They're not industry people at all.
So one of the problems that we hear, one of the challenges, is the fact that we have built a sub-optimized grid. There is no really interoperability. We talk about, I'm an IEEE guy, and within all of the different societies, we all have developed something about interoperability, but we didn't talk to each other.
Right.
We created all of our own silos there. The same is true. It's probably one of the biggest challenges, is because now we're doing everything at scale. How does what you do affect interoperability in terms of you not doing it alone and you got your way of doing it and it doesn't talk to other people? How is the Sun Company becoming part of that interoperability equation, or are you?
No, absolutely. It's a point, maybe an inflection point in the industry where, because we're so, like many companies our size, also so heavily dependent on software technology, enterprise software technology, which absolutely embraces interoperability as a primary consideration. And then when you start to think about impact of cybersecurity on these mission critical systems, which is what they are, so we've got the hardware components and all of the management of that from a power perspective, and then the overlay of that with as we call it, our digital twin, which is this idea of designing a system, in a physical system on paper, electronically, and then be able to simulate and modify that as well as operate it as part of that going forward. I'm an IEEE guy too, so I completely understand that exactly a lot of the concerns, and I think it's partly because interoperability on the power side, I'm sure you're aware of this, but for example, most people still associate interoperability with communications protocols.
Right, exactly.
And the predominant communications protocol in the power industry still is Modbus. It's 20 years old. But it's, a 2-cent UART is the cheapest thing for a manufacturer to put on a board, so that's what they do. And that's the reality that you have to deal with. So the key to making this work is your interoperability has to recognize the fact that there is a significant amount of installed equipment that you have to work with. You don't have the luxury of replacing everything. So you have to be open architecture, if not, not necessarily open source, but you have to be open architecture, and you have to embrace the standards like IEEE 2030 on our microgrid site. That have that as not just a goal, but a requirement in order to meet that standard. So.
We're having because one of the sponsors of this is the Grid Edge, the IEEE PES Grid Edge conference and exposition, and I have to be honest, I'm on the steering committee, so I make sure that I get to say that in every one of these. I support that. I had a couple of IEEE volunteers, the chairman of that grid committee, the vice president of meetings for IEEE. We're all volunteers. Yeah. And I said, why do we do this? Sometimes we spend more time with volunteering for IEEE with a job. It's a passion to change the world.
It absolutely is.
You're doing something at the Sun Company that obviously is going to nobody can do it all alone, but talk about that a little bit, the Sun Company specifically, and all of these things that we just talked about. How are you addressing your world?
Yeah, well, I have to give a shout out to our CEO, Jolie Mickelson. She's an unusual visionary who has a passion for building a organization that has some of the best standards, objectives, values that are well articulated and they live it. And part of that is also recognizing that to be successful, it has to embrace all of the people that it impacts, not just the people who can afford something. So a lot of what the Sun Company is doing is we're looking to what's the requirement to deliver renewable generation, and if there is an impediment to that or a dependency on something else, then how do we solve that dependency? She's an ex-Tesla exec, so that's not inconsistent with their thinking.
Okay.
In terms of tackling everything that comes up as far and when you're going through that, and it's a unique collection of talent. I would say from people that have lived through a lot of the trials and tribulations over the past 15 years with some of that, and has decided that what we want to do is make a difference, and we're going to make a difference by delivering what we believe will be the best energy storage technology for stationary applications, as well as being able to address this democratization of power so that it's ubiquitous in its application rather than centralized.
Right. So we're going to get to the Sun Company, the storage part of that. But one thing I want, when you go back, tell her I want to interview her. We'll do a Zoom interview, and we will publish this.
She will absolutely blow this discussion away.
Okay, good, excellent. We'll do that. So Sun Company itself, the whole idea of flow batteries, I was sold 10 years ago, and I didn't even know what they were, but I said, that sounds like something that could be a game changer, because the scale.
Yep.
It does something at scale, and it doesn't depend on lithium.
Right.
Tell me a little bit about what Sun Company does in that space.
We have the technology we use was developed at PNNL, the lab, not too far from EPRI up there, but and it's the highest energy density that we can get in a flow battery. So we think that in order to achieve the kinds of penetration levels, we have to be able to get below 250 watts per liter, or above 250 watts per liter. So starting to get to the low end of lithium, but not having the environmental concerns. And as you said, flow batteries are unique. They, with the exception of maybe annual servicing on pumps and switches, they really don't wear out. The electrolyte doesn't wear out. They don't require any special environmental conditions. There's nothing about
cause fires.
And the advances that have happened a lot more in Europe. Interestingly enough, there was a couple of months ago there was a flow battery symposium in Brussels, and the Europeans are very focused on flow batteries. In fact, if you're doing anything right now on energy storage, they want to help anybody that's doing it. But there's been huge advances in the past couple of years, beginning with vanadium. That was really one of the early on ones, and now focus on how do we get more energy density to get a smaller footprint, because you really want to get a flow battery that'll fit in a residential environment. Ultimately, that's where you want to be, especially with something like an EV.
You want a flow battery that'll fit where?
A residential environment.
Really?
Yeah.
You're talking about neighborhood or talking about home?
Homes.
Wow. Okay, that is a game changer.
It is. Yep. And you need very high energy density.
Yeah.
Very good efficiency, and a footprint that ensures that you have extensive runtime on a 200 amp circuit.
Right. Are these going to be above ground, underground?
It's likely that the tanks will probably be below ground just because it's more stable.
Yeah.
It's got like geothermal, but not necessarily so. And the power electronics will be in your garage.
Right. You know what makes me think of? We used to have these propane tanks now, right? Now we replace them with flow batteries, and I mean, I've heard of the scale for utility scale, but that's really, so you guys are working on, you have a solution that is residential scale?
No, we're completely focused on the industrial scale first with a modular design that we know will fit in the smaller form factor.
Right, okay. That's excellent.
Yeah.
The Sun Company hasn't been around a long time.
No, it has not.
But obviously there's a pedigree with your CEO, yourself, a lot of other people. Talk to me about the value system that makes it work, because your eyes kind of shone when you said something about the values and what we're trying to accomplish.
I'm old enough to have been around a lot of organizations and companies that have professed a level of concern, whether they now refer to it as ESG or not. That is more for annual report or more for talking points in an interview as opposed to the way they live it. And the difference with the Sun Company is that it's, Jolie leads by example. It's exactly what she says. We are always discussing how it is that we're not only what we're doing for the Sun Company, but what we're doing for our local communities. What is it you're doing? How is it you're volunteering? What is it you're involved in? How can we help in that process? As well as just some very simple things, whether it's authenticity, which is maybe the most important one, the quality of life and your life balance, to the way you interact with other people around you. And it's the grit to be able to get through all that, and a small set of values that really represent an extraordinary approach to this is how you're going to solve the problem. It's getting everybody on board and everybody to believe it.
That's excellent.
Yep.
Well, this has been excellent. Thank you so much. We will do some publishing of this and get it back to you. But so much.
I appreciate it, Alan, so much. So nice to meet you.
So all of these interviews that we have conducted have been sponsored by the people behind me. The first one is the Grid Edge Conference and Exposition, which takes place in April 2023 in San Diego. The IEEE PES Grid Edge Conference and Exposition has been a long time in the making. This will be our first one, and it will be a delight. I can already tell you that we've had more papers, more panelists than we could possibly hold, and the conference itself is going to be brilliant. The second organization sponsoring us is H2Scan. H2Scan is ubiquitous in the transformer industry as the best. It's kind of like Intel, it's inside. H2Scan is a hydrogen sensing technology that is patented, that has been around for the last 20 years. It really came on strong as transformer hydrogen became a problem. DGA recognized by IEEE, and I just thank the people at H2Scan. They are also in electrolyzers, fuel cells, battery storage, but hydrogen safety is incredibly important. They're in refining, in processing, so H2Scan, thank you. Lastly, RE+. We are at the Renewable Energy Plus Conference and Exposition, and as we close this one out, I want to thank them for allowing us to conduct these interviews here, for allowing us to be part of their incredible conference. It's been enormous. There have been 27,000 people that have attended this conference, and you can tell the energy, the excitement that's taking place within the renewables industry, so thank you, RE+. It's been a delight to do these interviews, and I hope you've enjoyed them.